The taste of stale air and a deep, crushing defeat lingered on my tongue, a phantom flavor that no amount of water could wash away. My eyes fluttered open, not to the murky depths of the river where my last breath had escaped, nor to the cold, unforgiving stone of Lord Beaumont's castle walls, but to the familiar, slightly musty scent of my own bedchamber. Sunlight, a thin, hesitant ribbon, dared to pierce through the heavy damask curtains, painting faint, golden stripes across the worn velvet of the chaise lounge. A small, intricately embroidered cushion lay beside me, still indented from where I had rested my head in a futile attempt to escape the incessant ache of my previous existence. This was it, then. The beginning. Again. A chilling certainty, colder and sharper than any winter wind, settled deep within my bones. I was Cassia, a name that felt both intimately mine and utterly foreign, a vessel for a soul that carried the echoes of 1,000 heartbreaks, 1,000 agonizing ends. My first life, my only life, had culminated in a desperate, frantic flight through unfamiliar corridors, my heart a terrified drum against my ribs, my lungs burning with the futility of escape. I remembered the desperate scramble over the castle walls, the agonizing plunge into the frigid current of the river below, the bitter, metallic taste of betrayal that had poisoned my final moments. All of it, every single agonizing detail, a direct consequence of him, my stepfather. A man whose soul was so consumed by the insatiable maw of greed and the intoxicating lure of chance that he had dared to trade me, his mere stepdaughter, a disposable pawn, to an aging, corpulent noble. A transaction designed solely to clear his own mountainous, self-inflicted gambling debts. In that prior existence, I had been a different Cassia. A quiet, obedient girl, conditioned from birth to accept my fate with a demure nod and a lowered gaze. I had internalized the rigid societal dictates that dictated a noblewoman's worth, her primary purpose to be a carefully arranged pawn in a dynastic chess game. I had allowed myself to be led to the altar, to accept Lord Beaumont's clammy hand, to endure his suffocating, almost predatory attention. I had wasted precious years within his gilded cage, a prisoner of circumstance and my own ingrained obedience, until the suffocating weight of my reality became unbearable, pushing me to a desperate, ultimately fatal, attempt at freedom. But now, a seismic shift had occurred. I was reborn. Not into an entirely different world, not as a completely new being, but into the very same life, the very same moment, the precise day before the final, damning stroke of the pen that would seal my first life's tragic end. The ink on the contract wasn't dry yet. The fatal during seal hadn't been pressed, and this time, armed with the vivid, searing clarity of every humiliation, every whispered cruelty, every agonizing second of that futile escape, I was different. This time, I knew his weaknesses. I understood the delicate web of his financial ruin. And this time, I wouldn't merely survive, I would orchestrate the spectacular, devastating downfall of the man who had dared to sell me. My heart hammered in my chest, a powerful, rhythmic beat, not of fear or lingering dread, but of a fierce, exhilarating, almost giddy vindication. This was my second chance, a rare, impossible gift. A cosmic intervention, perhaps, or a divine mockery of the man who had believed he held absolute power over my destiny. He had attempted to curse me, to condemn me to a life of misery, but in his hubris, he had unwittingly bestowed upon me the ultimate weapon, foresight. I possessed an intimate knowledge of his sordid haunts, his desperate, pathetic pleas for loans, his pathetic, all-consuming addiction to the clink of dice and the thrill of the ill-gotten win. And I knew the man, Lord Beaumont, a creature whose insatiable appetites were matched only by the fragile, easily bruised nature of his aristocratic ego. I pushed myself up from the plush mattress, my muscles feeling strangely taut, as if they, too, remembered the strain of a desperate, ill-fated flight. My hands, still small and delicately formed, were capable of far more than embroidery now. They were capable of carving out a new destiny. They were capable of revenge. The first step, I knew with crystalline clarity, was the most crucial. I needed information, precise, irrefutable details of my stepfather's latest, most ruinous debt. He was predictably reckless, his habits as ingrained as the patterns on a well-worn deck of cards. He would have played at the exclusive, clandestine gambling dens known only as the Serpent's Coil, clandestine operations run by the shadowy figure known solely as the Collector. This was the very crucible where he would have incurred the debt, where he would have signed away not only his own meager semblance of a soul, but mine along with it. And I needed money. A substantial sum, far more than a young, sheltered noblewoman, confined by the rigid strictures of aristocratic society, should ever possess or even comprehend. My mother, bless her departed soul, had been a woman of quiet strength and surprising foresight. She had, over many painstaking years, accumulated a small, carefully managed inheritance, a secret nest egg painstakingly hidden from my stepfather's grasping, avaricious hands. It had been intended as my dowry, a safeguard against destitution, a small bulwark against a capricious world. Now, in this reborn existence, it would be my most potent weapon. My mind raced, a whirlwind of calculated steps, formulating a plan with a chilling, almost surgical precision I never knew I possessed. The timing, I understood with absolute clarity, was paramount. I had less than 24 hours to execute my intricate scheme, to unravel the threads of his deceit before they became irrevocably woven into the tapestry of my doom. My initial act, one of subtle defiance, was to feign a sudden, debilitating headache, a perfectly plausible excuse, I reasoned, to be left undisturbed in the sanctuary of my room. My stepfather, Baron von Altenburg, a man whose entire universe revolved around the next hand of cards and the fleeting allure of perceived financial gain, dismissed my feigned indisposition with a careless wave of his hand. He was far too preoccupied with his own pressing affairs, his own desperate schemes, to question my sudden, convenient malady. His profound lack of genuine care, a consistent and deeply painful thread that had woven its way through both my lives, was now, ironically, a welcome advantage. It meant he wouldn't scrutinize my absence from the common areas, wouldn't notice my quiet, purposeful movements within the sprawling, silent manor. Under the convenient guise of needing absolute rest, I carefully, painstakingly, extracted the small, intricately carved wooden box hidden beneath a loose floorboard in the deepest recess of my wardrobe. Inside, nestled amongst layers of ancient, faintly scented lace, lay a heavy pouch of gold coins, their metallic weight a surprisingly comforting presence in my trembling palm. Beside them were a few exquisite pieces of jewelry, delicate relics of my mother's former elegance, each shimmering with unspoken memories. This collection, I calculated with grim satisfaction, was more than enough. It was everything. My next critical step was to venture out into the bustling city, to navigate its grimy underbelly, specifically the labyrinthine alleys that housed the less savory, more discreet establishments. I needed a disguise, something utterly unremarkable, something to completely obscure my identity as a noblewoman. The manor's servants, accustomed to my quiet, almost ethereal demeanor, rarely paid me much mind. Their lives revolved around their own immediate concerns, their loyalty a fragile commodity bought by my stepfather's fleeting, capricious generosity. With a calculated boldness, I slipped out of the house, through the rarely used servants' entrance, a hidden path I had discovered during my desperate, ultimately fatal escape in my previous life. The chilly morning air, which had felt so suffocating and heavy with dread then, now felt invigorating, a crisp, exhilarating promise of freedom and impending victory. I made my way swiftly to a small, unassuming seamstress's shop nestled on the outskirts of the bustling market district. It was a place whispered about for its discretion, a haven for those who sought anonymity. I purchased a set of simple, dark clothes, a heavy, shapeless cloak with a deep, concealing hood, and sturdy gloves to mask my uncalloused hands that had known only the delicate touch of embroidery silk and the turning of turning-at craw book pages. The shopkeeper, a kindly woman with eyes that seemed to hold a lifetime of unspoken stories, simply nodded, asking no questions as I paid her in cold, hard cash, a surprisingly large sum that silently conveyed my absolute need for anonymity and haste. My appearance utterly transformed, I then plunged into the churning heart of the city's underbelly, a world I had only ever glimpsed from the carefully guarded confines of a carriage window in my former life. The air here was sharp, a pungent, almost overwhelming mix of stale ale, unwashed bodies, the greasy aroma of frying street food, and something acrid, almost metallic, that hinted at illicit dealings and desperate dalliance. Lives. The sounds were a raucous symphony, the shouting of vendors hawking their wares, bursts of coarse laughter, the distant, rhythmic clang of a blacksmith's hammer, and the low, guttural murmur of hushed conversations. My heart pounded a furious rhythm, but it was a drumbeat of purposeful determination, not the suffocating throb of fear. I moved with a newfound stealth, seeking out whispers, rumors, the subtle, almost invisible currents of information that flowed ceaselessly through this hidden world. It wasn't long before my ears caught the name I sought, spoken in hushed, almost reverent tones, the Collector. He was a man of immense, almost mythical power, a puppet master pulling invisible strings from the deepest shadows, his formidable reputation built upon unwavering discretion and a chillingly ruthless efficiency in collecting what was owed to him. His office, so I gleaned from fragmented, hushed conversations in a grimy, dimly lit tavern, was located behind a hidden door within a seemingly abandoned warehouse on the city's long-forgotten docks, a place where light rarely touched and desperation clung to every brick. Navigating the docks was a challenge in itself, a maze of rotting wood and perpetually damp cobblestones. The air grew heavy here, thick with the cloying stench of stagnant water, decaying fish, and the brine of the sea. The uneven cobblestones were slick with grime, making every step treacherous. I kept my head down, my hood drawn low, blending seamlessly into the shadows, a silent specter of vengeance moving through the decaying landscape. I eventually found the warehouse, its tall, imposing windows boarded up like sightless eyes, its massive loading door seemingly bolted shut with heavy, rusted chains. But a faint, almost imperceptible glow emanated from a narrow crack in the warped, rotting wood. I pushed gently, and the door groaned open with a mournful sigh, revealing a dark, impossibly narrow passage that stretched into the unknown. The interior of the passage was a stark, almost disorienting contrast to the grim, decaying exterior. A single, flickering gas lamp, hung high on a grimy chain, illuminated a clean, sparsely furnished antechamber. A hulking man, scarred and silent, his bulk filling the narrow space, stood guard, his eyes, cold and assessing, fixing on me with an unsettling intensity. He said nothing, his face impassive, simply held out a massive calloused hand, waiting. I understood instantly. I placed a single, gleaming gold coin into his palm. He nodded, a barely perceptible dip of his head, then gestured with a thumb towards an ornate wooden door at the far end of the silent room. Behind that door lay the Collector's private office. It was surprisingly elegant, furnished with dark, polished mahogany and plush, deep green velvet. Tall, imposing bookshelves filled with countless leather-bound volumes lined the walls, their spines gleaming softly in the dim light, suggesting a wealth of knowledge and a quiet, formidable intellect. A large, intricately carved desk, dark and imposing, dominated the very center of the room. Behind it sat a man, slender and elegantly composed, with eyes that gleamed with an unsettling, almost predatory intelligence. He was young, perhaps no older than I, but his entire demeanor exuded an ancient, formidable power, an aura of quiet authority that belied his youthful appearance. He wore a simple, impeccably tailored black suit, its fabric so dark it seemed to absorb the light, and his hands, long, slender, and almost unnervingly still, were meticulously clean, a stark contrast to the grime of the docks outside. He looked up as I entered, his movements fluid and unhurried, a faint, unreadable smile playing on his perfectly sculpted lips. "Well, now." His voice was smooth, like polished stone, a resonant baritone that seemed to fill the room. "A curious visitor indeed. I don't often receive unannounced guests of your delicate persuasion. What precise business brings you to the Serpent's Coil, young mistress?" His gaze was unnervingly direct, piercing, as if he could see the intricate gears turning within my mind. I slowly pulled back my hood, revealing my face, allowing the dim light to illuminate my features. His eyes, sharp and calculating, widened almost imperceptibly as they registered my noble features, instantly recognizing the subtle, unmistakable signs of my lineage. A flicker of surprise, quickly masked, crossed his face, a fleeting crack in his composed facade. "I have come to purchase a debt," I stated, my voice steady, though beneath my carefully constructed composure, my heart hammered a frantic rhythm against my ribs. "Specifically, the debt owed by Baron von Altenburg. I understand he has signed a rather comprehensive contract with you." His smile broadened, morphing into a predatory, almost wolfish gleam that sent a shiver down my spine. "Ah, the Baron," he purred, his voice laced with a knowing amusement. "A frequent patron, I assure you, and a rather unfortunately persistent gambler. His most recent acquisition of a truly significant loan was indeed comprehensive. It involves his entire estate, all of his future earnings, and, as a rather unique form of collateral, the hand of his stepdaughter in marriage to a particularly eager, and I must say, rather elderly, noble, Lord Beaumont, if my memory serves me correctly." His gaze lingered on me for a long, uncomfortable moment, a knowing, almost complicit glint in his piercing eyes. He was already aware. He knew everything. "Precisely," I confirmed, my voice unwavering, my resolve hardening with each of his words. "I wish to purchase this debt. All of it. Every single coin owed. And the contract that accompanies it. I want it transferred to my name, immediately and irrevocably." He leaned back in his chair, his long, slender fingers steepled beneath his chin, his eyes never leaving mine, their intensity unnerving. "A rather bold proposition, young mistress," he mused, his voice a silken thread. "Debts of that magnitude are not trifling matters. And the collateral, as you noted, it is quite unique, is it not?" He chuckled again, a low, unsettling sound that seemed to reverberate in the quiet elegance of the room. "Are you absolutely certain you comprehend the full, intricate extent of this transaction? The risks involved? The ramifications?" "I comprehend it perfectly," I asserted, my gaze firm, unwavering, meeting his piercing stare head-on. "I am fully prepared to pay the full sum of the debt, plus a substantial premium for your absolute discretion, and for the immediate unconditional transfer of the contract into my sole ownership." He paused, a long, assessing silence hanging heavy in the air, broken only by the soft, rhythmic ticking of an unseen clock. Finally, with a slow, deliberate nod, he conceded. "Very well. A business opportunity, after all, is a business opportunity, no matter how unusual. My rates, I must inform you, are not negotiable." He then named a staggering sum, one that would nearly deplete my mother's precious inheritance, a sum that would leave me with barely a coin to my name. But I knew, with an absolute, undeniable certainty, that it would be worth every single coin, every last glimmer of gold. "Agreed," I stated, my voice firm, without a trace of hesitation. I reached into the deep pocket of my new cloak and pulled out the heavy pouch of gold. I emptied its entire contents onto his polished mahogany desk. The coins cascaded onto the dark wood, glittering, a gleaming, undeniable testament to my unwavering resolve, my absolute commitment. He meticulously counted them, his long fingers moving with a practiced, almost surgical precision, his expression remaining utterly unreadable, a mask of professional detachment. "And the contract?" I pressed, my voice eager, a barely suppressed tremor of anticipation running through me. "I require the original, signed document, and proof of its unequivocal transfer to my ownership. I need everything finalized, here and now." He pushed a finely carved wooden box, small and elegant, across the desk towards me. "All in here, young mistress." The original document, meticulously signed by the Baron himself, witnessed and legally sealed. Your acquisition will be legally binding and absolutely unassailable. As for undeniable proof of transfer, a simple endorsement will suffice, my official mark and your own signature, affixed to the document. He then offered me a slender, exquisitely crafted quill pen, its fine tip already dipped in glistening, impossibly black ink, seemingly waiting for its purpose. My hand trembled almost imperceptibly as I took the quill, its weight strangely significant. This was it. The culmination of my desperate journey, the very moment of my long-awaited redemption, the sweet, intoxicating taste of my impending vengeance. I slowly, deliberately signed my name, Cassia von Altenburg, in a clear, decisive hand, directly beneath his own precise, elegant script. With that single stroke, I sealed the fate of the man who had dared to sow my life away. The ink, as I watched it begin to dry on the heavy parchment, seemed to gleam with a peculiar, almost luminous crimson hue under the flickering gaslight, a vivid contrast to the otherwise stark black lines. A chilling thought, a macabre satisfaction flickered through my mind, igniting a dark, triumphant spark. This ink, in this life, was not merely black. It was blood red. "One final detail, young mistress," the collector purred, his voice a low, resonant murmur, a hint of profound, almost conspiratorial amusement playing on his lips as he carefully took the contract back, examining my signature with a meticulous eye. "The Baron, he is, if I recall correctly, expecting this particular debt to be cleared tomorrow, by Lord Beaumont, I believe." "He will receive the cleared debt," I replied, a cold, unyielding smile touching my lips, "but not from Lord Beaumont, and most certainly not in the way he expects. He will receive it directly from me." The collector's eyes gleamed with a knowing, almost complicit amusement, a silent acknowledgement of the intricate game I was playing. "Ah, a new chapter then," he said softly, a barely audible sigh. "For both of you." He then offered a slight, almost respectful bow, a gesture of deference I had not expected. "It has been a singular pleasure doing business with you, young mistress. May your endeavors be supremely fruitful." I left his office, the heavy wooden door closing silently, irrevocably, behind me. The cold, hulking guard simply nodded, his eyes utterly devoid of expression, a silent sentinel witnessing a transfer of power he perhaps could not fully comprehend. I walked back through the grimy, labyrinthine alleys, the pungent stench of the docks no longer oppressive, no longer a symbol of despair, but now, miraculously, a subtle scent of impending victory, of an absolute, undeniable triumph. The physical weight of the contract, now undeniably mine, tucked securely within my cloak, was a thrilling burden, a tangible symbol of my reclaimed destiny. My stepfather had, in his blind greed, signed away my life. Now, he had, with his own hand, unknowingly signed away his own, irrevocably, fatally. And he had no idea. The intricate stage was meticulously set. The kindling was dry. The fire was ready to burn. Coal. The return to the manor was a blur, a chaotic rush of adrenaline and simmering anticipation. My mind still reeled from the sheer audacity of my actions, the dizzying magnitude of what I had managed to achieve in a single audacious day. I slipped back into my room just as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the sprawling manor in long dramatic shadows that seemed to stretch and twist like malevolent spirits. My conveniently timed headache miraculously eased, and I descended for dinner, feigning a fragile recovery, my movements deliberately slow, my expression carefully composed. My stepfather, immersed as always in his usual self-pity and his ceaseless litany of complaints about his perpetual bad luck, barely registered my presence at the table. He grumbled incessantly about pending debts, about the sacrifices he was perpetually forced to make, conveniently omitting the cruel and undeniable fact that I was the singular most significant sacrifice he was offering up. His oblivious self-absorption, a familiar and deeply painful sting from my past, was now, ironically, a welcome advantage, a fuel to my quiet, simmering triumph. Sleep, when it finally came, was fitful, punctuated by vivid, almost hallucinatory flashes of the contract, its ink now undeniably, horrifyingly blood-red in my mind's eye, pulsating with the life of its brawn. Own. The anticipation of tomorrow, the day of reckoning, the dawn of my ultimate vengeance, was a potent elixir, a thrilling, almost addictive surge of power. The morning dawned with a deceptive, almost serene tranquility. I dressed with meticulous, almost ritualistic care, choosing a simple yet elegantly cut gown of deep sapphire, its rich color a striking contrast to the dark, chilling depths of my purpose. My heart beat a steady, resolute rhythm, a drumbeat of unwavering determination. There was no room for hesitation now, no space for doubt, no lingering shadows of my past obedience. My stepfather was, predictably, in his study, a room perpetually reeking of stale cigar smoke, cheap brandy, and the lingering miasma of desperate, ill-conceived schemes. He was pacing, a frantic, caged animal, muttering incoherently to himself, occasionally glancing with increasing agitation at the precariously stacked pile of overdue bills and ominous, threatening letters that cluttered his immense mahogany desk. He looked agitated, clearly consumed by anxiety for Lord Beaumont's imminent arrival and the promised, desperately needed financial reprieve. I entered silently, my footsteps barely disturbing the thick Persian rug. In my hands, I carried a small, elegantly bound leather portfolio. He glanced up, annoyance flickering across his face, a familiar expression of impatience. "Cassia? What is it? I'm busy. Lord Beaumont will be arriving soon, and I need to prepare for his imminent arrival." Indeed, I said, my voice calm, almost serene, radiating an unnerving sense of composure. "He will, but I believe you have some other rather pressing business to attend to first, Father." I used the term "father" deliberately, allowing it to hang in the air, a subtle, almost imperceptible mockery of the title he so poorly, so undeservedly bore. His brow furrowed in confusion, a flicker of irritation in his eyes. "What nonsense are you speaking of now, child? This is hardly the time for your girlish whims." I walked slowly, deliberately, to his immense desk, my movements graceful and unhurried. I placed the leather portfolio before him, its weight a silent testament to its contents, and opened it with a precise, almost surgical movement. Inside lay the contract, pristine and menacing, its heavy parchment seeming to absorb the very light from the room, radiating an almost palpable aura of dark power. His eyes, initially clouded with confusion, slowly widened, a dawning, terrifying recognition spreading across his features. "What is this? How did you get this?" His voice was a frantic, terrified whisper, laced with the undeniable presence of dawning panic. "This, Father?" I began, my voice a silken thread of simmering vengeance, each word carefully articulated, savored. "Is the full and complete record of your most recent, and most ruinous, debt to the collector, the one for which you so generously offered me as collateral." His face paled, a sickly, almost jaundiced green hue replacing his usual ruddy, wine-blotched complexion. "No! That's impossible! Lord Beaumont was supposed to... he was going to..." His voice trailed off, a broken, desperate sound, his eyes darting frantically from the damning contract to my impassive face, a desperate, unspoken plea for understanding, for mercy, in their depths. "Lord Beaumont will not be clearing your debts, Father," I continued, my voice unwavering, each word a hammer blow against his crumbling reality. "Because I have already done so. I have purchased your debt, all of it." His mouth fell open, a silent, gaping gasp of utter disbelief, his eyes wide and unseeing. "You? But how? Where would you get such funds? This is madness. You are a child." "Does it truly matter?" I challenged, a cold, triumphant smile gracing my lips, a smile that held no warmth, no joy, only a profound sense of satisfaction. "What truly matters, Father, is that this contract, the very document with which you so casually signed away my life, is now legally and irrevocably mine. It belongs to me." I reached into the portfolio again, my movements deliberate, and pulled out a separate, thinner parchment, its lines crisply drawn. "And this, Father," I said, sliding it across the polished surface of the desk towards him, "is a new contract, one that meticulously reflects your renewed and quite substantial obligations." He stared at it, his hand trembling uncontrollably as he slowly reached out to grasp the document. As his eyes, filled with growing dread, scanned the meticulously detailed lines, his face slowly contorted into a mask of dawning absolute horror. The terms were brutally, undeniably clear. All of his assets, his entire estate, his future earnings, his very freedom, were now legally bound to me, irrevocably transferred as full and complete repayment for his overwhelming debt. Not in the guise of a forced marriage, but in perpetual servitude. He was bound, utterly and irrevocably, to my will, his destiny now solely within my control. The ink, as he stared at it, surely seemed to him to burn with the same vivid, terrifying crimson hue that I had seen, scorching his very soul. "No," he choked out, his voice hoarse, a ragged gasp of utter despair. "This is a trick, a monstrous, cruel trick. You can't do this. This is illegal, immoral." He crumpled the damning paper in his trembling hand, his eyes wild with unfathomable terror, darting around the room as if searching for an escape that did not exist. "Oh, but I can, Father," I countered, my voice chillingly calm, resonating with a power I had never even dreamed of possessing in my previous life. "I have. Every single detail is legally binding, meticulously witnessed, officially sealed, and fully paid for, by me. You signed it, Father. With your own hand, you signed away your life for your pathetic gambling addiction, just as you so callously tried to sign away mine." He stumbled backward, a defeated, broken man, his face ash-gray, his once haughty demeanor completely evaporated. The proud, self-important Baron was gone, utterly obliterated, replaced by a terrified, cornered animal, trembling on the verge of collapse. He understood. He truly, utterly understood the terrifying magnitude of his ruin. He saw the cold, unyielding vengeance in my eyes, the unwavering resolve that reflected not just moments of anger, but centuries of suppressed rage, of unaddressed injustice. And as for Lord Beaumont, I continued, my voice dropping to a low, dangerous whisper, savoring each syllable. I believe he will be very, very disappointed when he arrives to claim his prize, only to find that it has been repossessed. Perhaps he will decide to seek repayment directly from you, now that you are conveniently free of your other, more pressing obligations. A noble of his stature, I imagine, would be quite displeased to be made a fool of, would he not? I watched his face, enjoying the slow, agonizing dawning of this fresh horror, this double blow. The thought of Lord Beaumont, robbed of his promised bride and incandescent with aristocratic fury at the deception, turning his considerable wrath upon my utterly bankrupt stepfather, was a sweet, exquisitely poetic justice. He collapsed into his chair, a defeated, guttural groan escaping his lips, his hands clutching desperately at his head as if to contain the swirling chaos within. He was ruined, utterly, irrevocably, completely ruined. His carefully constructed world of debt, deceit, and undeserved privilege had crumbled into dust around him, orchestrated with chilling precision by the very person he had sought to sacrifice for his own selfish aim. Salvation. I looked at him, truly looked at him, not with the clouded vision of a terrified girl, but with the clear, unblinking eyes of a woman who had seen beyond his pathetic facade. And for the first time I felt no sorrow, no pity, no lingering attachment, only a profound, almost spiritual sense of closure. He had tried to burn my life to ashes for his own selfish desires. Now, it was unequivocally his turn to burn. And I, Cassia, reborn and resolute, would stand by and watch the flames of his self-inflicted ruin consume him, finally, irrevocably free. The lingering phantom taste of dust had been replaced by the sweet, intoxicating, almost divine taste of absolute justice. My rebirth was complete. My vengeance, absolute. The chaos that erupted in the manor in the wake of Lord Beaumont's furious departure was a chaotic, yet strangely harmonious symphony of my vindication. Lord Beaumont's 2 hulking guards, following his furious command, tore through my stepfather's study, ransacking drawers with unrestrained fury, overturning stacks of important papers, their frustrated grunts and muttered curses echoing through the otherwise quiet, elegant house. Lord Beaumont himself, a crimson-faced embodiment of aristocratic rage, continued to pace furiously in the grand foyer, his face a mask of apoplectic fury and disbelief, his voice a roaring torrent of accusations hurled at my stepfather, who remained a crumpled, sobbing heap on the praline, polished marble floor. The elegant, almost sacred silence of the manor, a silence that had once represented my suffocating imprisonment, was now shattered by the glorious cacophony of his undoing, a testament to his crumbling world. I stood apart from the escalating pandemonium, a silent, composed observer amidst the raging storm, my deep sapphire gown a striking, almost defiant contrast to the spiraling despair and chaos that surrounded me. The manor's numerous servants, initially bewildered by the sudden, unprecedented uproar, quickly began to gather in hushed whispers at the edges of the grand foyer, their faces a mixture of wide-eyed curiosity and genuine apprehension. Their furtive glances darted incessantly between the enraged, blustering figure of Lord Beaumont, the utterly broken, pathetic form of the Baron, and me, a silent, unyielding presence, a clear question silently forming in their collective gaze. What in the name of the heavens has happened here? I knew, in that precise moment, with an unshakable certainty, that the story of this morning's dramatic events would spread like wildfire through the interconnected, gossiping networks of the noble houses, a sensational tale of a disgraced, financially ruined baron, a publicly humiliated, furious lord, and a mysterious, enigmatic young noblewoman who inexplicably held the intricate strings of destiny itself. The guards, after a thorough yet utterly fruitless search of the study, returned to Lord Beaumont, their faces grim, their hands conspicuously empty. "My lord," one of them reported, his voice tinged with a palpable surprise and confusion. "There is absolutely no sign of any contract for the debt. All of the Baron's financial papers, his ledgers, his correspondence, indicate that his debts have, inexplicably, been cleared. There is no mention anywhere of Lord Beaumont's involvement in any such transaction." Lord Beaumont's face, already a furious shade of crimson, turned a deeper, alarming shade of purple that bordered on apoplexy. "Impossible. He swore upon his honor. He produced documents. This is a conspiracy, a monstrous deception. Altenburg, you will answer for this treacherous perfidy." He lunged forward, his hands seizing my stepfather by the collar of his expensive, now rumpled silk jacket, dragging him roughly to his feet, his grip unyielding. My stepfather, barely conscious, a pathetic, broken figure, whimpered, his eyes wide and unfocused. She bought it. She took everything. It's all gone. She bought the debt, all of it." His voice was a thin, reedy wail, barely audible. Lord Beaumont, his face contorted in a mask of profound disgust, released him, letting my stepfather fall back to the floor in a heap. He then turned his blazing, furious gaze directly to me. His eyes narrowed to menacing slits. "And you, girl, you dare to defy the established order? To tamper with sacred noble agreements? Do you truly comprehend the catastrophic consequences of such unprecedented insolence? Such blatant disrespect?" But I remained unwavering, my gaze steady, meeting his furious stare without flinching, my composure unassailable. Interfered Lord Beaumont, or simply corrected a grave, unforgivable injustice? A man who would so casually sell his own kin to clear a paltry gambling debt deserves no protection from the so-called noble houses, his honor. If he ever possessed even a shred of it, was lost the very moment he so callously put my life on the auction block, treating me as mere chattel. His jaw tightened, a muscle clenching visibly in his cheek, his eyes narrowing further to angry slits. He was a powerful man, accustomed to absolute deference, to unquestioning obedience, but even he recognized the impossible, humiliating position he was in. To draw a weapon on the young noblewoman, in her own home, however disgraced her family might now be, would precipitate a scandal far worse, far more damaging than the one he was already embroiled in. He had no legal standing, no tangible proof of his clandestine transaction, only the increasingly erratic, unreliable word of a broken, gambling-addicted baron against the silent, unyielding, irrefutable Bayeret. Testimony of meticulously cleared ledgers. His pride, his most cherished and fragile possession, was being publicly flayed, torn to shreds before the eyes of my household. He let out a frustrated, guttural roar, a raw, primal sound of pure, impotent rage and profound humiliation. "You will regret this, girl. I swear it. I will see you stripped of your title, your name dragged through the deepest mud of society. You will rue the day you dared to cross Lord Beaumont." "I doubt it," I replied, my voice disturbingly calm, laced with an unnerving, chilling certainty. "My name, as you will soon discover, Lord Beaumont, is now synonymous with the restoration of justice, with unwavering resolve, and your reputation, Lord Beaumont, will, I assure you, speak entirely for itself." He glared at me for a long, seething, silent moment, his eyes blazing with fury and a profound, agonizing embarrassment. Then, with a final, defeated huff, he turned abruptly on his heel. "Come, we are leaving. This house, this man, is utterly beneath my contempt. Let him rot in his own misery." He stormed out, his two burly guards following closely behind, their heavy boots echoing on the marble floor, leaving behind a bewildered, stunned silence. The massive oak doors slammed shut with a resounding thud, echoing the absolute finality of his dramatic, humiliating departure. My stepfather collapsed back onto the polished floorboards, utterly defeated, a broken, empty husk of a man. The servants, their faces a mixture of profound shock and dawning understanding, slowly began to disperse, their whispers growing louder, more urgent, like a rapidly spreading contagion. The story, I knew, was already on its way to the bustling capital, carried on the swift wings of rumor and eager gossip, twisting and turning with each telling, but the core truth immutable. I walked slowly over to my stepfather, who lay there, a pathetic, shrunken shell of his former self. His once proud, though always undeserved, bearing was utterly gone. He looked small, incredibly pathetic, almost insignificant. "Consider this your repayment, father," I said, my voice cold, devoid of the complex emotions that had once tormented me, that had once tied me to him. "For every insidious lie, every stolen coin, every crushing debt you so cruelly forced upon my mother, and for every agonizing moment of paralyzing fear you so carelessly instilled in me during my first, doomed, life. He stirred faintly, his eyes, dull and lifeless, fixed on me, a flicker of incomprehension in their depths. "What will become of me?" he whispered, his voice cracking, a mere shadow of its former booming self. "I have nothing, no home, no funds, nothing. You have taken everything." "That," I replied, a cruel, precise smile touching my lips, "is entirely up to you. You are irrevocably indebted to me now. You will work, you will serve, and you will experience, for the very first time in your pampered, wasteful life, the true, unyielding meaning of consequences. You meticulously built your entire life on the suffering of others, on their vulnerabilities. Now, you will rebuild it, if you will rebuild it. Can, on your knees. 1. He flinched, a visible tremor running through his body, but offered no further protest, no desperate argument. He was utterly broken, his spirit extinguished, his will utterly crushed by the inferno of his own making. I had envisioned this exact moment countless times in my fevered nightmares, dreamed of his despair, his utter, complete ruin. Now that it was here, tangible and real, it felt strangely anticlimactic, a hollow yet profoundly satisfying victory. The satisfaction was deep, pervasive, but also accompanied by a quiet, almost melancholic understanding of the emptiness that remained. The trauma of the past was truly severed, the chains of my inherited misery finally, irrevocably broken. Rebuilding and reclaiming the days that followed Lord Beaumont's explosive departure were a whirlwind of meticulous organization and the quiet, yet firm, assertion of my newfound authority. My immediate and paramount priority was to restore order to the manor, to transform it from a chaotic echo of past grievances into a functioning, harmonious household. The existing servants, initially wary and uncertain about the dramatic shift in power, quickly understood the new dynamic. Their loyalty, which had once been a tenuous, fragile thread tied precariously to my stepfather's fleeting whims and inconsistent generosity, now shifted, slowly but surely, to me, the calm, resolute mistress who had orchestrated such a profound and unprecedented change. I made it a point to meet with each of them individually, taking the time to look them in the eye, assuring them of their continued positions, guaranteeing their wages, and demanding only competence, diligence, and genuine respect in return. Their collective relief was palpable, a wave of silent gratitude washing over the household, and their efficiency soon began to reflect their renewed sense of security and purpose under my new leadership. My stepfather, stripped of his noble title and all of his financial assets, was confined to a small, Spartan room in the servants' quarters, a stark contrast to his previous opulent chambers. He was assigned a series of menial, often humbling tasks, and was explicitly denied any access to funds or, crucially, any communication with the outside world. His protests, which had initially been defiant, punctuated by frustrated outbursts and bitter complaints, soon dwindled into a sullen, resigned resentment. And he truly had nothing left. No remaining leverage, no means to escape the suffocating consequences of his own self-destructive actions. I observed him with a detached, almost scientific curiosity, watching the once proud, overbearing Baron descend slowly but inexorably into the quiet despair of a man utterly dependent on the one he had tried so ruthlessly to destroy. It was a bleak sight, a stark, yet undeniably necessary, form of justice. My next critical step was to consolidate my control over the entire estate. My mother's meticulously hidden inheritance, though substantial in its original form, had been almost entirely depleted by the significant purchase of my stepfather's overwhelming debt. I needed to ensure the manor's finances were not merely solvent, but robust, its resources managed with foresight and absolute efficiency. I spent countless hours poring over dusty ledgers, deciphering antiquated accounts, and consulting with the estate's long-suffering, yet incredibly loyal manager, a stern but scrupulously honest man named Mr. Finch. He had endured years of my stepfather's profligacy, his careless spending and rampant neglect. Mr. Finch was initially surprised, then visibly and deeply impressed by my sharp mind, my innate understanding of complex financial matters, and my meticulous attention to every minute detail. "My lady," he remarked one crisp afternoon, after I had unearthed several long-standing discrepancies and inconsistencies in the estate's outdated, poorly maintained accounts. "You possess an acumen for business rarely, if ever, seen in one so young, and certainly not in the Baron." He caught himself quickly, a faint blush spreading across his weathered cheeks, embarrassed by his unintended comparison. I simply smiled, a private, quiet victory echoing deep within my heart. My past lives, the fleeting, almost dreamlike glimpses of noblewomen expertly managing vast, complex estates, of diligent merchant families meticulously balancing intricate ledgers, of shrewd women overseeing bustling marketplaces, now served a profound, almost miraculous purpose. The myriad skills I had unconsciously absorbed, the vast repository of knowledge I had once dismissed as utterly irrelevant to my confined existence, were now my most powerful instruments, my tools of effective leadership. I immediately initiated a series of comprehensive reforms, streamlining archaic processes, meticulously cutting unnecessary expenses, and actively seeking new, profitable ventures for the estate's fertile lands. I transformed neglected pastures into productive fields, revived forgotten orchards, and introduced innovative, sustainable practices that boosted yields and efficiency. Whispers and reputation, the rumors, of course, as is always the case in the tight-knit world of the nobility, spread with astonishing rapidity through the gilded circles of society. The sensational tale of Baron von Altenburg's sudden, spectacular ruin, his inexplicable, almost supernatural loss of wealth and social status, and the shocking, almost unbelievable implication that his own stepdaughter was somehow intricately involved in his downfall, became the dominant topic of every hushed conversation, every salon, and every exclusive supper party in the capital. Lord Beaumont, humiliated beyond measure and consumed by incandescent fury, did indeed try to exact his petty revenge. He attempted to spread the most malicious gossip, openly impugning my character, accusing me of dark witchcraft, of clandestine dealings with unsavory forces, and of outright treachery. But his own reputation, already significantly tarnished by his overt, desperate attempts to acquire a young bride through less than honorable means, only suffered further, deepening his public humiliation. The very notion of an aging noble trading for a young woman's hand, while not entirely uncommon, was still viewed with a degree of distaste, and Lord Beaumont's overbearing nature, coupled with the dramatic, almost theatrical collapse of the deal, quickly transformed him from an aggrieved party into a figure of widespread ridicule, not sympathy. The collector, true to his word and his formidable reputation for absolute discretion, remained utterly silent, an unseen, unacknowledged force. There was no discernible trace, no tangible evidence, of my involvement in the debt transfer, only the stark, undeniable official records showing the Baron's debts inexplicably cleared, followed immediately by his sudden, complete forfeiture of all assets. The profound mystery surrounding these events only added to my growing, formidable reputation, cloaking me in an aura of enigmatic power. I was increasingly perceived as an enigma, a young woman who had, against all conventional odds, meticulously orchestrated the dramatic downfall of a once powerful, albeit deeply corrupt, baron and publicly dunny. Humiliated a prominent, influential lord. A potent mixture of admiration, fear, and a healthy dose of burning curiosity now surrounded my name, an almost mythical quality. Invitations to the most exclusive social events, which had once been sparse and perfunctory, now poured in, a seemingly endless stream of engraved cards. My new position as the unencumbered, financially solvent mistress of a now flourishing estate, coupled with the tantalizing, intriguing rumors surrounding my audacious actions, made me a truly fascinating and sought-after figure. I accepted only a select few of these invitations, choosing strategically to cultivate an image of quiet strength, sharp intellect, and unwavering integrity, rather than one of vengeful ambition or social climbing. I meticulously learned to navigate the treacherous, intricate waters of noble society with a calm, almost effortless confidence, my countless observations from myriad past lives proving utterly invaluable. I could instinctively read the subtle cues, the hidden agendas lurking beneath polite smiles, the intricate dance of unspoken alliances, the veiled threats and empty promises that defined their complex interactions. A voice for the unheard. One particular incident further solidified my burgeoning reputation, transforming me from a mere enigma into a widely recognized champion of justice. A neighboring noble, Lord Viridian, a man infamous for his cruel temperament, his oppressive land management, and his utter disregard for the well-being of his tenants, attempted to seize a fertile strip of land belonging to a small, defenseless village nestled on his border. In my first life, such a blatant land grab would have been swiftly and brutally resolved by the powerful lord's unchecked will, the voiceless villagers left to suffer in silence, their pleas unheard, their lives irrevocably, cried. Disrupted. But this time, I intervened. I meticulously gathered irrefutable evidence of Lord Viridian's corrupt practices, his long history of illegal land appropriations, and his ruthless exploitation of his vulnerable tenants. I then leveraged my growing influence, discreetly contacting other, more principled nobles who had long, but silently, chafed under Viridian's tyrannical rule and oppressive policies. I presented a compelling, unassailable case to the regional magistrate, not with impassioned pleas or emotional outbursts, but with cold, hard, irrefutable facts and meticulously researched legal precedents I had diligently studied from dusty law books. The magistrate, initially hesitant to openly cross such a powerful and notoriously vindictive lord, found himself facing an undeniable mountain of overwhelming evidence, supported by the quiet, yet immensely powerful, backing of several influential families I had painstakingly cultivated and brought to my side. The outcome was truly unprecedented, shaking the foundations of regional power. Lord Viridian was not only forced to immediately relinquish the illegally seized land, but was also compelled to pay substantial restitution to the villagers for their suffering and losses, and faced a severe public reprimand that irrevocably damaged his standing and prestige within noble society. It was a clear, unequivocal demonstration of a new kind of power, one that relied not on brute force, ancient lineage, or inherited privilege, but on intellect, unwavering integrity, meticulous planning, strategically formed alliances. The villagers, once powerless and voiceless, now looked to me with a profound, almost reverent gratitude, their eyes filled with a mixture of hope and awe. My actions sent a clear, unmistakable message throughout the region. Injustice, particularly against the vulnerable, would no longer be tolerated on my watch. The manor's transformation, the manor itself, underwent a complete and profound transformation. It was no longer a decaying symbol of my stepfather's fading grandeur and impending doom, but a vibrant, thriving center of activity, pulsating with renewed life and purpose. The sprawling gardens, which had once been hopelessly overgrown, choked with weeds, and utterly neglected, now bloomed with a riot of vibrant colors and intoxicating scents, a living, breathing testament to careful cultivation and meticulous care. The crumbling facades of the ancient stone structure were meticulously repaired, the drafty windows replaced, and the dusty interiors were lovingly redecorated with a keen eye for both timeless elegance and modern comfort. It became a truly welcoming space, a bustling hub for innovation, learning, and genuine community engagement, its doors open to those who sought progress and fairness. I established a small, yet comprehensive, school for the children of the estate's tenants and the surrounding villages, firmly believing that knowledge was the true, unshakable path to liberation and self-determination. I hired dedicated, passionate teachers, ensured every child had access to an ever-growing collection of books, and actively encouraged critical thinking, challenging them to question and explore. My mother, in her own quiet, unassuming way, had instilled in me a deep love for learning, a flickering spark that my stepfather, in his ignorance and avarice, had tirelessly tried to extinguish. Now, that once fragile spark ignited a new generation, a generation that would be free from the oppressive shackles of ignorance, superstition, and predetermined, unchosen roles. My stepfather, still living within the manor's now transformed walls, remained a constant, grim, and utterly silent reminder of my tumultuous past. He continued his assigned menial tasks, his spirit broken, his eyes vacant and devoid of their former avarice. He never spoke to me unless directly addressed, and then, only in monosyllables, his voice a reedy whisper. He was a mere ghost in what had once been his own opulent home, a living, breathing monument to the bitter consequences of his own disastrous actions. Sometimes I would catch him watching me from afar, a flicker of something unreadable in his gaze. Perhaps a fleeting moment of regret, perhaps a lingering ember of resentment, but mostly a profound, chilling emptiness, a void where a soul once resided. I felt no pity, no lingering attachment, only a quiet, almost detached acknowledgement that his fate, however bleak, however agonizing, was entirely of his own making, an inescapable prison of his own design. The burning I had envisioned, the fiery conflagration of his ruin, was not a swift, merciful blaze, but a slow, agonizing process of internal combustion, consuming him piece by piece, day by agonizing day. A future chosen my personal life, too, slowly but surely, found a quiet, profound equilibrium, a sense of deep, abiding peace. Suitors, drawn by my increasing wealth, my undeniable influence, and the alluring mystique of my mysterious reputation, inevitably appeared, a steady stream of eligible young men from prominent families. I entertained them politely, with impeccable decorum, but always with a detached, almost amused curiosity. My past life's forced, agonizing marriage had left me with a profound, unshakable aversion to ever being anyone's chattel, or a mere stepping stone in their social ascent. I sought genuine connection, deep intellectual companionship, and a true partner who would genuinely respect my fierce independence, not seek to control or diminish it. The thought of a true, freely chosen partnership, one built on mutual respect, shared aspirations, and an unwavering understanding, was a possibility I now, for the first time, allowed myself to consider, a vibrant, hopeful contrast to the despair and constraint of my past. One crisp, clear autumn morning, as I meticulously reviewed the updated trade routes and projected profits with a young, astute merchant who shared my burgeoning vision for ethical commerce and sustainable growth, I found myself increasingly drawn to his quiet intelligence, his genuine enthusiasm, and the profoundly respectful, quote, way he engaged with me. He spoke to me not as a noblewoman of significant standing, but as an intellectual equal, a peer in a shared endeavor. He was not interested in my title or my growing wealth, but in my innovative ideas, my relentless drive, and my unwavering commitment to integrity and fairness. In that quiet, unassuming interaction, the subtle, delicate seeds of a different kind of future, one I had chosen entirely for myself, one utterly unburdened by the shadows of my past, began to quietly, gently, unfurl. My path, I realized with a profound sense of clarity, was no longer dictated by the cruel hand of a predetermined fate, or the selfish, destructive desires of others. I had decisively broken the suffocating cycle, burned away the torment of the past, and risen, phoenix-like, from the ashes a stronger, immeasurably wiser, and truly, utterly free woman. My life, which had once been a relentless tragedy, a saga of endless suffering, was now a vibrant testament to resilience, a powerful, inspiring narrative of self-determination and unwavering will. The ink, in my memory, remained a vibrant, searing, blood-red, a permanent, indelible symbol of the profound justice I had wrought, and the precious, irreplaceable life I had so fiercely, so meticulously reclaimed. And as I looked out at the flourishing estate, at the vibrant, thriving future I had so painstakingly carved out for myself, brick by brick, choice by choice, I knew, with an absolute, unshakable certainty, that this time, every single moment, every precious breath, single deliberate choice, was truly, irrevocably, gloriously mine. The narrative was no longer of a victim, but of a victor, writing her own epic story, one page at a time.